The Meridian Club wasn't the kind of place where Savannah Parker belonged, and everyone knew it. Nestled in the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side, the exclusive restaurant catered to politicians, business moguls, and men whose names never appeared in newspapers, but whose influence shaped the city's skyline. Savannah adjusted her black uniform for the 100th time that evening, her Texas drawl carefully suppressed as she navigated between tables of New York's most powerful figures. 3 weeks since her eviction notice, 2 weeks since her last real meal, and tonight was supposed to change everything. The temporary agency had promised good tips, cash in hand, no questions asked. She should have known better. Table 7 needs their wine service. Thomas, the restaurant manager, appeared beside her, with his perpetually disapproving expression. His grey hair was slicked back perfectly, his British accent making every word sound like a judgment. "And for God's sake, try not to embarrass us." Savannah bit back her response. She'd been waiting tables since she was 16, working her way through community college in Dallas before life fell apart. She knew how to serve wine, she knew how to smile and nod and make wealthy people feel important. What she didn't know was how to navigate the subtle power dynamics that pulsed through the Meridian Club like an electric current. Table 7 sat in the restaurant's most exclusive alcove, separated from the main dining room by frosted glass panels that provided privacy while maintaining an air of importance. 8 men in expensive suits discussed matters in low voices, their conversation punctuated by the soft clink of crystal and the rustle of documents being passed discreetly. At the head of the table sat Victor Halverson. Savannah had heard whispers about him from the other staff. Real estate mogul, they said, international investments, the kind of man who owned buildings but never lived in them, who made deals that moved millions but never touched actual money. Julian, the maitre d', had warned her to be especially careful around table 7. "Just serve and retreat," he'd said in his clipped French accent. "No small talk, no lingering." Victor looked younger than his 47 years, his dark Italian features sharp and predatory. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned, just enough to hint at the muscular chest beneath, and an elegant tattoo curved along the side of his neck. Something in script that she couldn't quite make out. A platinum Rolex gleamed on his wrist as he gestured while speaking, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Savannah approached with the wine cart, her hands steady despite her nerves. The conversation paused as she began the service, pouring the 2015 Barolo with practiced precision. The men barely acknowledged her presence, treating her like expensive furniture, functional but invisible. She was reaching for the final glass when Leonard Morrison, a heavy-set man with thinning hair and cruel eyes, made his comment. "Careful there, sweetheart. That wine costs more than you make in a month." The words hit her like a slap. Not because they were untrue, the bottle probably did cost more than her monthly income, but because of the casual cruelty behind them, the assumption that her financial situation was somehow amusing. Her hand trembled for just a moment, just enough. The glass slipped. Time seemed to slow as the Barolo arced through the air, deep red liquid catching the light before splashing across Leonard's white shirt and expensive jacket. The wine spread across the pristine tablecloth, soaking into the fabric like evidence of her failure. The silence lasted exactly 3 heartbeats. Then came the laughter. Not loud or boisterous, but worse, the kind of restrained amusement that spoke of superiority and disdain. Leonard's face turned red as he dabbed at his jacket with a napkin, muttering about incompetent help and people who don't belong here. "Jesus Christ," another man chuckled. "Maybe we should stick to plastic cups next time." "I told you hiring from those agencies was a mistake," someone else added. "You get what you pay for." Savannah felt her face burn with humiliation. Her hands shook as she tried to clean up the spill, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. She could feel tears threatening, the weight of her desperation pressing down like a physical force. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can pay for the cleaning. With what money?" Leonard sneered, his voice carrying across the alcove. "Your tip jar?" More laughter. Cruel, dismissive, designed to remind her of her place in their world. That's when Victor Halverson stood up. The movement was deliberate, controlled, and absolutely terrifying. His chair scraped against the marble floor with a sound that cut through the laughter like a blade. 6 feet of contained violence unfolded as he rose, his dark eyes scanning the table with the patience of a predator, choosing his moment. The laughter died instantly. Victor didn't speak immediately. Instead, he adjusted his jacket with careful precision, the movement drawing attention to the way his shoulders filled the expensive fabric. His fingers, adorned with a simple gold signet ring, smoothed down his tie as he looked around the table. When his gaze settled on Leonard, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Enough. One word, spoken quietly, almost conversationally, but it carried the weight of absolute authority, the kind of power that didn't need volume to be heard. Leonard's mouth opened, then closed. The wine stain on his shirt suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the ice in Victor's stare. "Get out," Victor continued, his voice still calm. "Now." "Victor, come on." Leonard tried to laugh it off. "It was just a joke. The girl, Victor interrupted, was doing her job. You were being an ass." He glanced at his Rolex, the platinum catching the light. "You have 30 seconds to leave before I have Mark escort you out." As if summoned by his name, Mark appeared at the edge of the alcove. Victor's head of security was built like a linebacker, his presence alone enough to end most arguments before they began. Leonard looked around the table for support, but found only averted gazes and uncomfortable silence. These men might be powerful in their own right, but they all understood the hierarchy. Victor Halvorsen didn't make idle threats. "This is ridiculous," Leonard muttered, but he was already standing, his movements sharp with wounded pride. "Over a fucking waitress?" Victor's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him. Dangerous. Predatory. 20 seconds, he said softly. Leonard left. The remaining men sat in stunned silence as Victor calmly returned to his seat. He picked up his wineglass, the only one that hadn't been affected by the spill, and took a measured sip. "Thomas," he called, his voice carrying easily to where the manager hovered nervously nearby. "Miss Parker will continue her shift. Any disciplinary action will be discussed with me directly." Savannah stood frozen, the wine-stained tablecloth still clutched in her hands. She didn't understand what had just happened, didn't comprehend why this powerful, dangerous man had defended her. She only knew that the ground beneath her feet had shifted in some fundamental way. Victor's dark eyes met hers for just a moment. There was no warmth there, no reassurance, just acknowledgement. He'd acted not out of kindness, but out of principle. Weakness wasn't tolerated at his table, and Leonard's behavior had been weak. "Clean this up," Victor said quietly, not unkindly. "Then bring us a fresh bottle." Savannah nodded, not trusting her voice. As she hurried away to get supplies, she could feel eyes following her. Some curious, some calculating, all wondering what she'd done to earn Victor Halvorsen's protection. She had no idea that her life had just become infinitely more complicated. 3 days passed before Savannah understood that her problems were just beginning. The first sign came Tuesday morning when she arrived at her studio apartment in Queens to find her landlord, Mrs. Chen, waiting with an envelope. "Someone paid your rent?" the elderly woman said without preamble, her broken English tinged with confusion. 3 months, cash. Savannah stared at the receipt, her heart sinking. She knew exactly who had made that payment, and the knowledge sat in her stomach like lead. In her world, the world of paycheck-to-paycheck survival, nobody gave away 3 months' rent without expecting something in return. The second sign came that evening at the Meridian Club. "Table 7 specifically requested you," Thomas informed her, his disapproval evident in every syllable. "I don't know what you did, but Mr. Halvorsen asked for you by name." Savannah's hands trembled as she adjusted her uniform. She'd hoped the incident with the wine would be forgotten, that she could fade back into invisibility. Instead, she found herself walking toward the same private alcove where her life had changed 3 nights ago. Victor sat alone this time. No business associates or political allies cluttering the space. Just him, a glass of whiskey, and a folder of documents spread across the white tablecloth. He looked up as she approached, his dark eyes unreadable. "Miss Parker." His voice was calm, professional. "Please sit." It wasn't a request. Savannah remained standing, her training kicking in. "I'm working, Mr. Halvorsen. I can't—" "You can." He gestured to the chair across from him. Thomas has been informed. She sat, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. Up close she could see the details she'd missed before, the way his dark hair was touched with silver at the temples, the small scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the intricate design of the tattoo that curved along his neck. Italian script, she realized, something about family or honor. "You paid my rent," she said quietly. "I did." "Why?" Victor leaned back in his chair, studying her with the patience of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. "Because you needed help, and I was in a position to provide it." "I didn't ask for help." "No," he agreed. "You didn't. Most people in your situation would have. They would have leveraged what happened the other night, tried to turn my intervention into an opportunity." He took a sip of his whiskey. "You went back to work." Savannah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I don't want you to say anything." Victor's fingers drummed against the table, the sound of his Rolex tapping against wood. "I want you to understand that your situation has changed." "What situation?" "Leonard Morrison isn't just a petty businessman with hurt feelings. He's connected to people who've been testing my patience lately." Victor's voice remained conversational, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "By defending you, I made a statement. Statements have consequences." Fear crawled up Savannah's spine. "What kind of consequences?" "The kind that make it dangerous for you to walk home alone at night. The kind that turn a spilled glass of wine into a political statement." He leaned forward slightly. "You're not safe, Miss Parker. Not because of anything you did, but because you were seen." The restaurant suddenly felt too warm, the air too thick. Savannah thought about her tiny apartment, her walk to the subway, all the dark corners where someone could be waiting. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "Nothing." The answer surprised her. "I want to offer you something." He slid a business card across the table, heavy stock embossed lettering, an address in Midtown. "A job, administrative work for one of my legitimate businesses. Better pay, better hours, better security." His dark eyes never left hers. "All you have to do is disappear from here." Savannah stared at the card. It was a lifeline, an escape from the precarious existence that had brought her to the Meridian Club in the first place. It was also a cage, gilded and comfortable, but a cage nonetheless. "And if I say no?" Victor's expression didn't change. "Then you continue working here, and I continue ensuring your safety. But the offer won't remain open indefinitely. You're trying to control me. I'm trying to protect you." He finished his whiskey, the gesture final. "There's a difference, though I understand why you might not see it." Savannah stood, the business card still on the table between them. "I need time to think." "You have until Friday." As she walked away, she could feel his eyes following her. The weight of his attention was almost physical, a reminder that she'd somehow become entangled in a world where kindness came with strings and protection required surrender. She left the card on the table. Thursday night everything changed again. Savannah was closing down her section when Julian appeared at her elbow, his usual composure cracked. "There are men asking about you," he whispered in rapid French-accented English. "Not police, not customers, men who don't belong here." Her blood turned to ice. "What kind of men?" "The kind who work for people like Caleb Whitmore." The name meant nothing to her, but Julian's fear was infectious. She followed his gaze toward the restaurant's entrance, where two figures in dark suits stood talking to Thomas. Even from a distance, she could see the manager's nervous gestures the way he kept glancing toward her section. "Back exit," Julian murmured. "Now." Savannah didn't argue. She grabbed her purse and coat, moving quickly through the kitchen toward the service entrance. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she pushed through the heavy door into the alley behind the restaurant. Mark was waiting for her. Victor's head of security stood beside a black sedan, his massive frame blocking most of the narrow alley. He looked up as she emerged, his expression grim. "Miss Parker, Mr. Halverson is waiting." The car's rear door opened and Victor stepped out. Gone was the composed businessman from their earlier conversations. This was someone else entirely, someone dangerous, whose very presence seemed to charge the air with violence. "Get in," he said simply. Savannah hesitated. Getting in that car would cross a line she couldn't uncross. It would make her part of whatever world Victor inhabited, whatever game was being played with her as an unwitting piece. "Those men in there," Victor continued, his voice soft but urgent. "They're not here for conversation. They're here because someone wants to send me a message and you're the envelope." The choice was simple. Trust the devil she was beginning to know, or face the devils she didn't. She got in the car. As Mark pulled away from the alley, Savannah caught a glimpse of the two men emerging from the restaurant's back entrance. Their faces were hard, professional, the kind of men who solved problems permanently. "Where are we going?" she asked. Victor was already on his phone, speaking in rapid Italian to someone on the other end. When he finished, he looked at her with something that might have been regret. "Somewhere safe," he said, "until I can figure out how to end this without getting you killed." The city lights blurred past the windows as they drove deeper into the night, and Savannah realized that her old life, her quiet, desperate, invisible life, was over. Whatever came next would be shaped by the man sitting beside her, a man whose protection came with a price she was only beginning to understand. The chapter. The safe house was a penthouse apartment in Tribeca that probably cost more than Savannah would make in a lifetime. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, while the interior was all clean lines and expensive minimalism. It was beautiful, sterile, and felt like a very luxurious prison. "You'll stay here until this is resolved," Victor said, setting down her single duffel bag, everything she owned in the world. "Mark will be stationed downstairs. Rachel will handle any legal complications." As if summoned, a woman in her 30s appeared from what Savannah assumed was a home office. Rachel moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to solving problems, her auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun, her grey suit perfectly tailored. "Miss Parker," Rachel extended a manicured hand. "I'm Rachel Morrison, Mr. Halverson's attorney. We need to discuss your situation." The irony of the shared last name wasn't lost on Savannah. "Any relation to Leonard?" "Unfortunately, yes. My ex-husband." Rachel's smile was sharp as a blade. "Which is why I'm particularly motivated to ensure your safety." Victor was already moving toward the door, his phone buzzing with incoming calls. "I have business to handle. Rachel will explain everything." "Wait." Savannah's voice stopped him at the threshold. "What business? What are you going to do?" He turned back, and for a moment she saw something flicker in his dark eyes. Not quite regret, but acknowledgement of the weight he carried. "What I always do," he said quietly. "Whatever's necessary." After he left, Rachel poured 2 glasses of wine and settled onto the leather sofa. "You're probably wondering how you ended up in the middle of a war you didn't know existed." The thought had crossed my mind. Leonard isn't just Victor's business rival. He's been working with Caleb Whitmore to undermine several of Victor's legitimate enterprises: real estate deals, construction contracts, city planning committees. Rachel took a sip of wine. What happened at the restaurant gave them an opportunity to make this personal. Savannah felt sick, because he defended me, because he showed weakness, in their opinion. In our world, protecting someone who can't protect themselves is seen as either nobility or vulnerability. Leonard and Caleb chose to interpret it as the latter. And now they're using me to get to him. Now they're trying to. There's a difference. Rachel's expression hardened. Victor doesn't negotiate with people who threaten innocence. He eliminates them. The casual way she said it made Savannah's blood run cold. Eliminates them how? However necessary. Business licenses revoked, financial backing withdrawn, criminal investigations launched. Rachel paused. Sometimes more direct methods are required. Savannah set down her wineglass with shaking hands. "I need to leave tonight. I'll disappear, change my name, go back to Texas. They'll find you." Rachel's voice was matter-of-fact. "Caleb Whitmore has resources, connections. Running will only make you look guilty of something, and it won't solve the underlying problem. Which is that Victor Halverson cares what happens to you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Savannah thought about the way Victor had looked at her in the restaurant, the careful distance he maintained even while offering protection. "He doesn't care about me," she said finally. "He cares about his reputation." Rachel smiled, but there was sadness in it. Keep telling yourself that, it might even be true. That night, Savannah stood at the penthouse windows, watching the city pulse with life below. She felt disconnected from it all, suspended in a bubble of luxury and danger that she didn't understand. Her reflection stared back from the glass. A small-town Texas girl who'd somehow become a pawn in a game played by kings and killers. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Pretty view from the 40th floor. Enjoy it while you can." Her blood turned to ice. She was 40 floors up in a building with security, protected by a man whose very name inspired fear. And still, they could reach her. She called the number Victor had given her for emergencies. He answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" She told him about the text, her voice steadier than she felt. There was a long pause on the other end. "Pack your things," he said finally. "Mark is coming up to get you." "Where are we going?" "My place. It's more secure." 20 minutes later, she was in the back of Victor's sedan again, watching the city blur past. But this time she noticed things she'd missed before, the way Mark constantly checked his mirrors, the route that doubled back on itself twice, the subtle hand signals he exchanged with other drivers. They were being hunted. Victor's penthouse made the safe house look modest. It occupied the entire top floor of a building in the financial district, with views that stretched from Brooklyn to the Hudson River. But what struck Savannah most wasn't the luxury, it was the loneliness. The space was immaculate, expensive, and completely devoid of personal touches. No photographs, no mementos, no evidence that anyone actually lived there. It was a fortress, not a home. "The guest suite is down the hall," Victor said, his manner formal. "There's a panic room behind the bookshelf in the study if anything goes wrong." "A panic room?" "Reinforced steel, independent air supply, direct line to my security team." He said it like he was describing the weather. "Hopefully you won't need it." Savannah followed him through the apartment, noting the subtle security measures: cameras disguised as artwork, reinforced doors, bulletproof glass. This wasn't just wealth, this was paranoia born of experience. "How do you live like this?" she asked. Victor paused at the entrance to his study, his hand resting on the doorframe. Carefully. Inside the study, she saw the first personal items she'd encountered. Books in multiple languages, a chess set with pieces carved from black and white marble, and a single photograph on the desk. A younger Victor with an older man who shared his dark eyes and sharp features. "Your father?" she asked. "Was." Victor's voice was carefully neutral. "He taught me that power without principle is just brutality, but principle without power is just philosophy." "Which are you?" He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw something vulnerable flicker in his dark eyes before he shuttered it away. "I'm trying to figure that out." Her phone buzzed again, another text from the unknown number. "Nice upgrade, but glass breaks so easily." This time Victor was close enough to see the message. His expression went cold, dangerous. He pulled out his own phone and made a call. "It's me," he said when someone answered. "They've escalated. I want Caleb Whitmore's location in the next hour, and I want to know how they got this number." He hung up and looked at Savannah, his jaw tight with controlled fury. "This ends tomorrow," he said quietly. "One way or another." "What does that mean?" "It means you're going to learn exactly what kind of man I am, Miss Parker, and I hope you can live with what you see." As if on cue, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing the apartment in an eerie red glow. Victor was already moving, pulling Savannah toward the panic room with one hand while drawing a gun with the other. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Whatever happens, don't look back." Through the reinforced windows, Savannah could see muzzle flashes from the building across the street. The sound of breaking glass echoed from somewhere in the apartment. They'd found her again. And this time, Victor Halverson was done playing defense. The panic room was smaller than Savannah had expected, maybe 8 feet by 10, lined with monitors that showed every angle of Victor's penthouse. She watched in horrified fascination as black-clad figures moved through the apartment with military precision, searching room by room. "How many?" Victor asked Mark through his earpiece, his voice deadly calm. "6 inside. Unknown number providing overwatch from the building across the street," came the reply. "NYPD response time is 8 minutes. Too long." Victor checked his weapon, a sleek black pistol that looked like an extension of his hand. "Rachel's en route with cleanup. Keep them contained until I can end this." Savannah grabbed his arm as he moved toward the door. "You can't go out there. There are 6 of them." "There are 6 of them now," he corrected, his dark eyes meeting hers. "There won't be in 10 minutes. "Victor, please." He turned to face her fully, and she saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Not fear, but something deeper. Regret, maybe, or resignation. "This is who I am, Savannah," he said quietly, using her first name for the first time. "This is what I do. I eliminate threats to the people under my protection. There has to be another way." "There was. I offered it to you 3 days ago." His fingers found her cheek, the touch surprisingly gentle. "You chose to stay." Before she could respond, he was gone, slipping out of the panic room with the fluid grace of a predator. Savannah pressed herself against the monitors, watching as he moved through his own apartment like a ghost. The first intruder never saw him coming. Victor appeared behind the man in the hallway, one hand covering his mouth, while the other delivered a precise strike to the base of his skull. The body dropped silently. The second and third were searching the master bedroom when Victor entered through the walk-in closet. 2 quick shots, barely audible through the suppressor. 2 bodies. Savannah found herself holding her breath, torn between horror and fascination. This wasn't the composed businessman who defended her in the restaurant. This was something else entirely, a killer who moved with the efficiency of long practice. "3 down," she heard Mark's voice through the speakers. 3 still mobile, heading for the study. Victor was already moving, using the apartment's layout to his advantage. He knew every corner, every shadow, every angle of approach. The intruders were skilled, but they were fighting on his territory. The 4th man died in the kitchen, caught in the open as he tried to flank Victor's position. The 5th made it almost to the study before Victor appeared behind him like a nightmare, the suppressed pistol coughing twice. The 6th was smarter. He'd taken position behind the marble chess set in the study, using the heavy table as cover. Savannah could see him on the monitors, his rifle trained on the doorway, waiting. "1 left," Victor's voice came through the earpiece. "Professional, he knows I'm coming." "Wait for backup," Mark urged. "No time. Overwatch team is repositioning for a shot at the panic room." Savannah's blood turned to ice as she realized what he meant. The men across the street weren't just providing cover. They were trying to get an angle on her hiding place. Victor appeared in the study doorway, but instead of entering, he did something unexpected. He spoke. "Caleb sent you," he said conversationally, his voice carrying easily across the room. "How much is he paying you?" "Enough," came the reply. The accent was Eastern European. Professional. "Nothing personal, Halverson, just business." "I understand. I've been in your position." Victor's tone remained calm, almost friendly. "But you should know, the woman you're here to kill, she's not part of this world. She's innocent." "No one's innocent in your world." "You're right. But she's not in my world. She's a waitress from Texas who spilled wine on the wrong man." Victor paused. "Caleb's using her to get to me. When this is over, he'll kill her anyway. You know that." Savannah could see the gunman's position on the monitor, could see him processing Victor's words. There was truth in them, and they both knew it. "What are you proposing?" the gunman asked finally. "Walk away. Tonight. I'll give you 60 seconds to reach the stairwell before I come after you. And the contract? Tell Caleb you never found us. Tell him we disappeared." Victor's voice hardened. "Or stay and die protecting a man who'll never pay your family the death benefit he promised." The silence stretched for 30 seconds. Then Savannah heard movement on the monitors, saw the gunman rising from behind the chess table. 60 seconds, the man said. "Starting now." Savannah watched the professional killer walk calmly toward the apartment's entrance, his rifle slung over his shoulder. He moved without haste, but with purpose. A man who'd made a calculated decision and would live with the consequences. Victor appeared on the monitors a moment later, watching from the study doorway until the man disappeared into the stairwell. Only then did he return to the panic room, his face grim. "It's over," he said as the door sealed behind him. "For now," Savannah whispered. "No. For good." Victor's dark eyes met hers, and she saw something final in them. "I'm ending this tonight." "What does that mean?" "It means Caleb Whitmore dies before sunrise." The words hit her like a physical blow. She'd known intellectually what Victor was capable of, but hearing him state it so matter-of-factly made it real in a way that watching him kill the intruders hadn't. "You can't just murder someone." "I can, I will." His voice was flat, emotionless. "He threatened you to get to me. That's not business, that's personal, and I handle personal threats permanently. Victor, please. This is who I am, Savannah." He turned away from her, already reaching for his phone. "This is what I do. I tried to warn you." She watched him make the call, listened as he gave orders in Italian to people who would carry them out without question. Within hours, Caleb Whitmore would be dead, and it would be because of her, because she'd spilled wine, because she'd been defended, because she'd been seen. "I can't live with this," she whispered. Victor ended his call and looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You won't have to. After tonight, you'll never see me again." "What?" "New identity, new city, new life. Rachel's already making the arrangements." His voice was carefully controlled. "You'll be free, Savannah. Free of me, free of this world, free of the danger that comes with being under my protection. And if I don't want that, then you're more foolish than I thought." Victor moved toward the door again. "I have work to finish." "Don't." The word came out stronger than she felt. "Don't kill him. Not for me." Victor paused, his hand on the door handle. "It's not for you, it's for me. He crossed a line, and lines have consequences. Then you're no better than he is." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. Victor's shoulders tensed, but he didn't turn around. "No," he said quietly. "I'm not. I never claimed to be." He left her alone in the panic room, surrounded by monitors showing an empty apartment and a city that suddenly felt very far away. Through the bulletproof glass, she could see the lights of Manhattan stretching to the horizon, millions of people living ordinary lives, unaware that somewhere in the darkness, men were making decisions about life and death based on pride and principle and the terrible mathematics of power. She thought about the gunman who'd walked away, about the choice Victor had given him and the choice he'd made in return. She thought about Leonard Morrison, drunk on wine and cruelty, and how a moment of casual humiliation had led to this. Most of all, she thought about Victor Halverson, a man who'd defended her honor and was now prepared to commit murder to protect her life, a man who saw the world in terms of threats and responses, who'd built an empire on the principle that strength was the only currency that mattered, a man who was about to destroy himself to save her. And despite everything, the violence, the danger, the blood on his hands, she realized she couldn't let that happen. Savannah found Victor on the penthouse terrace, standing at the railing with his phone pressed to his ear. The city sprawled below them, a constellation of lights that made the darkness seem infinite. His voice carried on the wind as he spoke in rapid Italian, finalizing arrangements that would end a man's life before dawn. "Cancel it," she said when he ended the call. Victor didn't turn around. "Go back inside, Savannah. This doesn't concern you anymore. It concerns me more than anyone." She moved to stand beside him at the railing, close enough to see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the metal like he was holding himself back from something. "You're about to become a murderer because of me." "I've been a murderer for 20 years, he said quietly. "Tonight won't change anything." "It'll change everything." She turned to face him, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Because this time you'll be doing it for someone who matters to you." Something flickered in his dark gaze. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "You don't matter to me." Liar. The word hung between them, simple and devastating. Victor's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Even if that were true, he said finally, it doesn't change anything. Caleb Whitmore threatened you. That can't go unanswered. Why? Because of your reputation? Your principles? Savannah stepped closer, close enough to smell his cologne, to see the faint scar that cut through his left eyebrow. Or because the thought of someone hurting me makes you want to tear the world apart? Victor's control cracked for just a moment, and she saw the truth in his eyes, raw, desperate, terrifying in its intensity. Don't, he whispered. Don't make this about feelings. Feelings get people killed in my world. Your world. She reached up, her fingers finding the edge of his collar, tracing the line of the tattoo that curved along his neck. What if I don't want to leave your world? What if I want to stay? You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Her hand moved to his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath the expensive fabric. I'm saying that somewhere between the restaurant and tonight, I stopped being afraid of you and started being afraid of losing you. Victor caught her wrist, his grip gentle but firm. I'm not a good man. Savannah, I've done things. I know what you've done. I watched you do some of it tonight. She didn't pull away from his touch. I also know that you defended me when you didn't have to, protected me when it would have been easier to let me disappear, gave a professional killer the chance to walk away when you could have just shot him. That doesn't make me... It makes you human. She freed her wrist and cupped his face in her hands, feeling the rough stubble along his jaw. It makes you someone worth saving. For a moment, Victor leaned into her touch, his eyes closing as if he were memorizing the sensation. When he opened them again, she saw something she'd never expected to see in the gaze of a man like him. Hope. If I call this off, he said slowly, Caleb will try again. He'll keep coming until one of us is dead. Then we deal with it, together. Savannah's voice was steady, certain. But we don't become killers. We find another way. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his phone heavy in his hand. When he finally spoke, it was in Italian, rapid and decisive. She couldn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Orders being countermanded, plans being changed, death being called off. When he ended the call, he looked at her with something that might have been wonder. You realize what you've just done? He asked. You've made me weak. No, Savannah said, rising on her toes to press her lips to his. I've made you strong enough to choose. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid of what it might mean. Then Victor's arms came around her, pulling her against him with desperate intensity, and she could taste the fear and longing and hope on his lips. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. This is insane, he whispered. You're a waitress from Texas. You're a man who stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for herself. Savannah's fingers found the platinum Rolex on his wrist, tracing the metal that had caught the light during so many tense moments. You're someone who gives people choices, even when they don't deserve them. You're someone who's been alone so long you've forgotten what it feels like to have someone care about your soul, instead of your power. Victor's laugh was shaky, uncertain. And what if Caleb doesn't accept this? What if he keeps coming? Then we face it together, all of it. She looked out over the city at the lights that represented millions of lives, millions of choices, millions of chances for redemption. But we face it as people who choose love over fear, hope over revenge. Love. Victor's voice was barely audible. Savannah turned back to him, seeing past the expensive clothes and dangerous reputation to the man underneath, lonely, guarded, desperate for connection but terrified of the vulnerability it required. Love, she confirmed. Messy, complicated, impossible love between a Texas waitress and a New York crime boss who's trying to figure out how to be better than his worst impulses. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face as if looking for some sign that this was real, that she wasn't going to disappear like everything else good in his life. I don't know how to do this, he said finally. I don't know how to be normal. Good thing I'm not asking for normal. Savannah smiled, the expression transforming her face. I'm asking for you, all of you, the good, the bad, and everything in between, even knowing what I am, what I've done, especially knowing that. She took his hands in hers, feeling the calluses and scars that told the story of his life. Because I've seen what you can become when someone believes in you. Victor brought her hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. You're going to change everything, aren't you? We're going to change everything, she corrected. Together. As if to punctuate her words, Victor's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He glanced at the screen, then at Savannah. It's Rachel. Probably wondering why I just called off a hit. Answer it, Savannah said. Start making those changes. Victor smiled, the first real smile she'd ever seen from him, and answered the call. Rachel. Yes, I called it off. No, I haven't lost my mind. Well, maybe I have. His eyes never left Savannah's face. Set up a meeting with Caleb Whitmore, tomorrow. Neutral ground. It's time to end this like civilized people. As he spoke, Savannah realized that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, dangers to face, a whole world of complications that came with loving a man like Victor Halverson. But for the first time since spilling wine in an exclusive restaurant, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. In the arms of a man who'd learned that sometimes the strongest thing you could do was choose mercy over vengeance, love over fear, hope over the darkness that had defined his life for so long. Enough, Victor said softly, echoing the word that had started everything between them. But this time it wasn't about ending something. It was about beginning. Years later, Savannah would look back on that night as the moment everything truly began. Not the spilled wine, not the laughter, not even Victor's intervention, but the choice they made together on a Manhattan terrace, surrounded by city lights and the promise of something better. The meeting with Caleb Whitmore had been tense, formal, conducted in the neutral territory of Rachel's law office, with enough witnesses to ensure everyone's safety. Victor had offered a deal, complete withdrawal from their mutual business interests, financial compensation for any losses incurred, and a guarantee of non-interference in future ventures. In exchange, all threats against Savannah would cease, and both men would return to the civilized competition that had defined their relationship before pride and politics complicated everything. Caleb had accepted, not out of fear, but out of recognition that Victor Halverson had changed in some fundamental way. The man who'd once responded to every challenge with overwhelming force was now offering compromise, negotiation, peace. It was either wisdom or weakness, and Caleb was smart enough not to test which. The transition hadn't been easy. Victor's world didn't accommodate softness well, and there were those who saw his newfound restraint as vulnerability to be exploited. But Savannah had been there for every challenge, every moment of doubt, every choice between the old ways and the new. She'd learned to navigate the complexities of his business empire, to understand the delicate balance between legitimate enterprise and the shadows that always lurked at the edges. More importantly, she'd helped him learn to trust, not just her, but the possibility that strength could come from connection rather than isolation, that power shared was power multiplied rather than diminished. They'd married in a small ceremony in the Hamptons, witnessed by Mark and Rachel, and a handful of people who understood that love could bloom in the most unlikely soil. Savannah had kept her name. Parker Halverson had a nice ring to it, she thought. And Victor had kept his business, though it had evolved in ways that would have surprised his younger self. The Meridian Club still operated, though under new management, that treated its staff with the respect Victor insisted upon. Thomas had been quietly encouraged to find employment elsewhere, while Julian had been promoted to general manager with a mandate to create a more inclusive environment. Leonard Morrison had disappeared from New York society entirely, his business ventures mysteriously failing one after another, until he'd been forced to relocate to a smaller city, where his reputation couldn't follow. Rachel had handled the divorce proceedings with ruthless efficiency, ensuring that her ex-husband's departure was both permanent and profitable for her. As for Savannah herself, she'd discovered talents she never knew she possessed. The administrative position Victor had offered had evolved into something much more significant. She'd become his partner in every sense of the word, helping to guide his empire toward legitimacy while never losing sight of the principles that had brought them together. Standing now in their penthouse, a different one, warmer, filled with photographs and mementos and evidence of a life shared, Savannah watched Victor prepare for another business dinner. He still favored white dress shirts with the top buttons undone, still wore the platinum Rolex that had caught the light during so many tense moments. The tattoo on his neck had been joined by another, smaller one, her name in elegant script, hidden just below his collar where only she could see it. "Ready?" he asked, adjusting his cufflinks with the same careful precision she remembered from that first night. "Always," she replied, and meant it. They'd learned that love wasn't about changing each other, but about choosing each other every day despite the complications, despite the challenges, despite the fact that their worlds had never been meant to intersect. They'd learned that strength came not from standing alone, but from standing together. And sometimes, late at night when the city was quiet, and they were alone with their thoughts, they'd remember a moment in an exclusive restaurant when laughter had died, and a man had stood up and said a single word that changed everything. Enough. It had been enough then. It was more than enough now. And that's where we leave Victor and Savannah. Two souls who found each other in the most unexpected circumstances and chose love over fear, hope over revenge.